Well, hello everybody. It's Friday, day off, so I've got a lot planned today. One of the things I'm going to do is the seeds in the jugs, which I'm going to do later. But I'm also going to make a whole giant pot of beans to freeze up. And first we got to let the chickens out, as always, and then we'll go make the beans. Hello, chicken ladies. Come on out, boo-boos. Oh. Good girls. All right, you go play. See you later. All right, so there is a million ways to make beans. So I'm going to show you the way that I make beans, and this is what you need. Jalapeno, you keep the seeds in if you want it spicy, take them out if you don't. Onion, whole tomato, garlic, some ground Mexican oregano, and some bay leaves. I use tomato bouillon normally, but you can also use chicken bouillon. I keep these in my house at all times. I have backups just in case I need to, because that's what's up. Salt pork, it's just a block of pork. I keep it in my freezer when I'm not using it, and I cut a chunk off for my beans. So I'm gonna make a huge pot of them because they freeze really, really well. It's great for during the week. So let's get started. First thing I do is take an inch cube of this salt pork, and then I cut it into quarters, right, just so it can start to break down in my pot. And I put them in the bottom of a hot, very well loved enameled cast iron, and start to kind of render out that fat. And in the meantime, while this is rendering out, I'm gonna chop the vegetables. I cut the onions in half. They can stay pretty large because they're going to break down once we put the water and things in them. So I cut them into quarters, like so, and just basically keep them like this. Then I'm gonna do my jalapeno, which I don't want it too spicy. So what I do is I cut the top off, cut it down the middle, stand it up on its little end, and I use a spoon and I just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle right down and scoop all those seeds out. And I keep them just in half like this. I don't cut them any more than that. Set it off to the side, like so. Easy stuff. I'm gonna keep the tomato whole, because again, it's gonna break down. And then the garlic cloves, I just basically peel and again, keep whole. Usually I use, 2 or 3, depending on how big a pot of beans I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a pretty large one. So cut off a little end, give it a whack, peel off the skin, and there you go. Easy as that. Okay, this is a 5-pound bag of beans. I used about half the bag, and I put them in a little colander, rinsed them with water, made sure there's no little rocks or anything exciting. So you do you as far as how many beans you want to use. I'm making a big old pot of them, so I'm gonna use a big bag. And as far as like how many vegetables go with how many beans, I cannot tell you. You're gonna have to use your best judgment. If you're gonna do beans just for your family for one night and you're gonna use a cup of beans, maybe use half an onion or a quarter of an onion or half a tomato. Honestly, every time I make beans, I make a huge pot of beans, so I'm always using this much. But even if I wasn't, I probably still would use a whole onion and a whole jalapeno and a whole tomato, and it would come out just fine. So it's not like one of these recipes that you need to be like really serious about it, because I don't measure anything. So check out what the pork is doing. So it's starting to get a little brown and crispy and getting a little deep on the bottom. So what I do now is I just take my onions and I set it in the bottom. And these are gonna start to get a little color on them. Same thing with the jalapeno. This is gonna cause some smoke, so duck and cover if you are sensitive to smoke. I'm gonna hold off on doing the garlic because the garlic can burn kind of easily. But I am gonna take this tomato and I'm gonna stick the whole tomato right in the middle. Okie dokie, so they've been going for a little bit, and you can start to see that they're getting nice and brown on the bottom. We're not trying to cook this stuff, we're just trying to get color. So just keep kind of flipping around till they start to get a little bit of color. See that pork fat start to render down. If you don't have this pork belly or pork fat, you can use bacon if you wanted to, which I've done before. Throw this garlic in now. You can also use bacon grease if you keep bacon grease. And you can use lard, you can use butter. Honestly, I like this. I just feel like it gives it kind of a better flavor, and a little bit of salt. And we will not be putting salt in this until the very, very end, because salt will make your beans tough. And then you'll definitely know they'll be not great, not mushy. They'll kind of have a little bit of texture to them, which is not what you want in your beans. Okay, so these have really nice color. You see how charry they are? This is great. This is just what you want. It's starting to smell good, and I know it's gonna taste good. So I'm gonna add the beans over the top. I did not soak these beans overnight. I know that's a huge faux pas. People are like, you've got to soak your beans. I hardly ever soak my beans because I never know when I'm gonna make beans. I'm kind of a spur of the moment person. So I've never had issues with them, but if you wanna take extra care, you can soak them in water overnight, drain them, and that will work too. If not, like I said, I've never had issues. So I'm just now covering this with water, just a little bit of water. I'm gonna shake in a little bit of that oregano. Like I said, I don't measure, you just have to eyeball it to taste. You don't even have to put oregano in this if you don't want to, but I do feel like it adds a little something. I'm gonna add a couple bay leaves. These will come out before you blend it all in the end. They just kind of sit in there, float on top, and impart some flavor. Gonna stir it all up and turn it down so that it's not totally boiling, because if you crank it up, it's gonna break your beans apart and it won't be good. Then we'll put a lid on it, let it simmer for a couple hours. We'll check it periodically and see how she's looking. All right, since I did not soak these are sucking up a lot of water. See how they're dry on the top? And there's water down there? Just add some more water until they're covered. What you can do is just add a bunch of water in the beginning, knowing that it's gonna get soaked up, and see what you end up with. I don't like to have a lot of leftover juice just because I don't like to have a lot of leftover juice. You could drain the juice before you blend this, but I like to keep as much of the flavor that I've already started out with in there. And again, since I don't measure anything, I kind of gotta see it go down and then bring it up a little bit with some water. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. This is not like a hard, fast recipe. Like, you can do whatever you want. I just don't want all of that good stuff that we created to begin with to have to go down the drain because I put too much water in to begin with. So just don't let them burn if it sucks up too much water. Like, you gotta babysit this a little bit. Not too much. I mean, it's been probably 15 minutes since I started it originally, and then I just checked on it, and there's still enough water in the bottom not to burn these, but you know, give it a check every now and then. Put the lid back on, and we'll go probably another 15 minutes and we'll check on it again. Okie dokie, so 15 minutes more, and my beans are looking thirsty, so. Ooh. There we go.
A few moments later.
Okay, let's take a gander here. See how the water is just kind of like slowly moving around the pot? There's not a lot of bubbles. This is definitely not boiling. It's just a little bit under simmering. That's just what you want. You don't want to boil your beans. If you boil your beans, bad things happen. Do not put this on a big raging boil. You will not get what you want in the end. But this is doing what it's supposed to do. See how like the skin's coming off the jalapeno and the tomato's getting smushy? Obviously it's soaking up the water, so this is just exactly what you want it to be doing. Look at it. See how this tomato is fully mushed now? So I'm gonna turn up the heat just a tiny bit and get some more bubbles, and we'll get this going. But like I said, since I didn't soak these beans, I kind of slowly want to bring them up. We might start seeing a little, I don't like to call it scum, but I guess that's a word for it. A little scum kind of forming on the top. So once it starts doing that, we'll scoop some of it off and just keep on rocking. Now that all the vegetables are getting pretty mushy, I've cranked it up a bit so you see all those good bubbles. It's not a rolling boil. This is still just simmering. And where you see the little bits of kind of imperfections on here start to bubble up, just scoop them off and then discard them as you go. There'll be more and more as this bubbles down. So if you would have soaked these beans overnight, you could have brought it up to this like bubbly temperature right away, but since I did not, I wanted to start it off slow. It's starting to suck up a little bit more water, but this is still a good amount. Ooh, it's beautiful and bubbly. So it's starting to dry out a bit on top. I can lift these beans up and drop them. and I can kind of feel that there's texture to them. I know that sounds weird, but it's like they kind of go plop, 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 and you can kind of hear them. They're definitely not mushy yet. Even if I take one out, like this, I mean, they mush a little bit, but like there's still texture to them. That's not quite where you want to be yet. So I'm gonna add a little bit more water. Flatten it all down. And then we'll cover it up and keep on going. All right, so we're sitting at like 2.5 hours since we got started. So I'm gonna fish these bay leaves out, and everything looks really nice. I'm gonna scoop a little one out and mush it and see where we're sitting. I think that they're done. Boop, yeah, they're done. Okay, so I did not add salt to the beginning because, again, it makes your beans tough, so this is where the salt is coming from. I'm actually going to use both. I'm going to use like a teaspoon of the chicken bouillon, and I'm going to use a teaspoon of the tomato bouillon, test it, see how it tastes, add more if needed. All right, so those beans have been going for like 2.5 hours. I just put that chicken bouillon and tomato bouillon in there, so I'm going to do just a very quick taste test of the broth. Oh yeah, that's good. And then Andy got me this immersion blender, which is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm gonna turn off the heat and start blending these beans up. Okie dokie, so these have cooled just a tiny bit, but if you're immersing these and they blow up on you, it's gonna burn you, so caution. Start off slow, mush them down, and then go from there. Also, if you notice, I didn't remove those pieces of pork. I'm just blending it all up together. I so badly want to reach in there and grab one and just eat the whole thing, but I won't do it. I'll keep blending it. So once you get the majority of the chunks out, you can really start going to town, crank it up, stick it in this pot, and just give it a little swizzle while you're going. It's going to give it a smooth texture. If you had too much water in it, this is where you're going to find out. Hopefully you don't, and they're nice and thick. But yeah, that is the process of making the beans. They are beautiful, silky, and delicious, and just the right consistency. I think we did okay. So only thing left to do now is let this cool, stick it in Ziploc bags, freeze it, and it's ready to go for the week.